The Black Dahlia Murder of 1947 remains one of the most infamous and chilling unsolved cases in American history. The brutal slaying of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress, captivated the nation and has continued to intrigue true crime enthusiasts and investigators for nearly 8 decades. As of May 2025, the case remains officially unsolved, but new theories and evidence continue to emerge, keeping the mystery alive. The crime that shook Los Angeles. It was the kind of January morning that felt ordinary, sunny, sleepy, almost idyllic. But that illusion shattered on January 15, 1947, when a woman taking her child for a walk spotted something grotesque in a vacant lot near 39th Street and Norton Avenue in Leimert Park, Los Angeles. At first, she thought it was a mannequin bisected at the waist, pale as porcelain, and eerily posed. But this was no mannequin. This was the body of Elizabeth Short, a 22-year-old aspiring actress who had been mutilated in ways that stunned even the most seasoned detectives. Her corpse had been surgically severed in half at the lumbar spine with a level of precision that suggested professional medical training. There was no blood at the scene, meaning she had been killed elsewhere, and her body carefully cleaned. Her face had been slashed from ear to ear, leaving what's infamously known as a Glasgow smile. Her body had been grotesquely arranged, arms raised above her head, legs spread apart, and parts of her flesh had been removed. The city of Los Angeles was no stranger to crime, but this case immediately ignited a media firestorm. Police were overwhelmed by the gruesomeness. Autopsy reports confirmed that Short had been tied down, tortured, and mutilated over a period of hours, perhaps days before her death. She had suffered blows to the head, her intestines had been removed, and there were no signs of sexual assault, a detail that only deepened the mystery around the killer's motives. In a cruel twist, Elizabeth Short had been living a transient life in Los Angeles, chasing dreams of fame. She was often seen wearing black and styling herself in a glamorous Hollywood fashion, which led reporters to nickname her the Black Dahlia, a play on the 1946 noir film The Blue Dahlia. The name stuck like tar, branding her both as a symbol of lost innocence and the ultimate femme fatale in death. A web of theories and suspects. Who killed the Black Dahlia? Dr. George Hodel. Enter the dark horse of the case, Dr. George Hodel, a wealthy and enigmatic physician whose name wouldn't publicly surface as a suspect until decades later. Hodel wasn't just a surgeon, he was a genius, fluent in multiple languages, with ties to Hollywood's elite surrealist art circles and a long list of disturbing allegations. The most damning source against him? His own son, Steve Hodel, a former LAPD homicide detective. Steve's theory isn't rooted in fantasy. It's backed by investigative rigor and disturbing evidence. After his father's death in 1999, Steve discovered boxes of photographs, documents, and recordings that would change the course of his life. In his best-selling book, Black Dahlia Avenger, Steve presents a case that George Hodel not only had the medical expertise to perform the mutilations on Elizabeth Short, but also had the psychological profile of a sociopathic killer. One of the most chilling discoveries came from surveillance tapes made in 1950, when the LAPD bugged Hodel's home during an unrelated investigation. On one of those recordings, Dr. Hodel was heard saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead." His secretary, by the way, had died under suspicious circumstances. And that's not all. Steve hired experts in handwriting analysis who matched letters sent to the press by someone claiming to be the Black Dahlia killer to George Hodel's own handwriting. The letters, taunting and cryptic, bore eerie similarity to those sent years later by the Zodiac killer, prompting Steve to develop a second, even more controversial theory that his father was behind both cases. The Zodiac killer connection. One monster, two legends. Just when you think the Black Dahlia case couldn't get any stranger, Steve Hodel throws in a bombshell that would make even the most jaded true crime fans blink twice. What if the Black Dahlia killer and the Zodiac killer were the same man? Yes, Steve Hodel has publicly argued that his father, George Hodel, may also be responsible for one of the most infamous serial killer cases in US history, the Zodiac murders. The Zodiac killer, active primarily in Northern California between 1968 and 1974, claimed responsibility for at least 5 murders and taunted law enforcement with cryptic letters and ciphers mailed to newspapers. Sound familiar? That's because the Black Dahlia case involved eerily similar behavior taunting letters sent to the LAPD and press, complete with personal items like Elizabeth Short's birth certificate and address book, mailed by someone calling themselves the killer. Steve noticed the stylistic parallels between the two killers' letters. The block letter handwriting, the use of symbolism, the smug tone, and even some matching phrasing. He dug into his father's timeline and found that George Hodel was indeed in California during the Zodiac killings. He was back in the US after living abroad in Asia and was still a free man. The investigation. The 1947 investigation into Elizabeth Short's murder can only be described as a circus of chaos. With intense media pressure, police found themselves sifting through over 500 confessions, many from attention seekers and mentally unstable individuals. At one point, the LAPD even received a letter from someone claiming to be the killer, offering to turn themselves in only to vanish again. The initial crime scene was poorly secured. Locals and press trampled the area before it was cordoned off. No fingerprints were found on Elizabeth Short's belongings, and any physical evidence that may have existed was likely compromised. The LAPD was working with pre-DNA era tools, no genetic testing, no reliable profiling, no databases to cross-check medical records or travel logs. Still, the LAPD worked tirelessly. They interviewed more than 150 suspects, ranging from lovers to nightclub owners, even a bellhop who claimed he had visions of her murder. Yet no one was ever charged. Fast forward to the 2000s, and a new generation of true crime fans, podcasters, and amateur sleuths reignited interest in the case. Cold case units, aided by modern forensics, began re-examining old files. But a problem remained. Much of the original evidence had been lost or destroyed. Rumors persist that someone inside the LAPD might have buried the case intentionally or not. Steve Hodel has repeatedly called for DNA testing of remaining items, like envelopes and stamps from the Black Dahlia letters. Some experts believe viable DNA might still exist. As of May 2025, no confirmed testing has been conducted, or at least nothing has been made public. Cultural impact and legacy. The murder of Elizabeth Short transcended true crime. It morphed into a cultural symbol, embedding itself in everything from Hollywood films to punk rock lyrics to conspiracy theories whispered on Reddit threads. James Ellroy, whose own mother was murdered when he was a boy, fictionalized the case in his 1987 novel The Black Dahlia, later turned into a film by Brian De Palma. Countless other novels, comics, documentaries, and even video games have featured references to the case. Why? Because the story is irresistibly dramatic. A beautiful young woman, Hollywood dreams, a horrific murder, a surgeon possibly behind it all, and a justice system that never closed the case. Elizabeth Short became, unwillingly, the face of a dangerous archetype, the dream-chasing woman consumed by the very city she tried to conquer. But this legacy is controversial. Some feminists argue that the media exploited her image, sexualizing her in death in ways that stripped her of humanity. While often remembered for how she died, Elizabeth Short was also a daughter, a sister, a friend, and someone whose story deserves more dignity than the salacious headlines she spawned. If this video gave you chills, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life mysteries. Got a theory? Drop it in the comments, we're dying to hear it. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember some secrets never die.